Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. And today is day 17 of the 20 days of the statistics course, and hope you are enjoying the series. Today in today's video, we're gonna study about the type 1 errors and the type 2 errors. Okay, so now imagine that you have built a fraud detection model. Okay, so you must decide that is this transaction fraud or is it normal. But here's the truth, that every decision has risk. Every decision has risk. By this line I mean that if you flag a fraud transaction as a legitimate one, or as the the correct one, that is also risky. And if you, on the other hand, if you flag a legitimate transaction or the correct transaction as a fraud transaction, that is also really dangerous. There is a danger in both the cases, and that's where the type 1 and the type 2 error comes in. So think of a courtroom. Okay, so let's imagine a courtroom. Okay, so inside a courtroom, so think of the hypothesis testing like a courtroom. Okay, so what would be your null hypothesis? So a null hypothesis, or the H naught, will be that the person is innocent. Okay, because the person is innocent until he or she is proven guilty. And your alternative hypothesis is that the person is guilty, like collect the required evidences and you say that the person is guilty, and you fail to reject the null hypothesis. So the now judge has to decide. So two kinds of mistakes can happen in this case. So what are the two mistakes? So first mistake can be a type 1 error. Okay, so the first mistake can be a type 1 error. So type 1 error is also known as the false positive. Okay, now let's talk about this in detail. So if I go by a simple definition is, the type 1 error is nothing but when you reject the null hypothesis when the null hypothesis is actually true. Or in simple words, I can say that you say something is happening but actually nothing is happening. So in a courtroom example, the innocent person is declared as guilty. That is the type 1 error. So let me write that example for you, that the innocent person is declared guilty. So this is a type 1 error. Now let's take another example. Okay, let's take a fraud example also. So what would be a type 1 error in case of a fraud example? Correct, that your normal transaction has been flagged as fraud or marked as fraud. So this is one more kind of the false positive or the type 1 error, and the customer gets blocked and there is a really bad experience. And the bad experience means that the customer might leave your bank, and it's very dangerous. Okay, so this is a type 1 error. Okay, so the important point to note here is that the probability of type 1 error is the alpha, that is the significance. So like, let me write that for you. So the probability of the type 1 error is nothing but the alpha, that is the significance level. Okay, so if alpha is 0.05, it means that you are accepting a 5% risk of false alarms. Now let's talk about the second type of error, that is the type 2 error. So if I go by definition, the type 2 error is nothing but when you fail to reject the null hypothesis, when the null hypothesis is actually false. In other words, like something is happening but you missed it. Okay, let me take an example also of the courtroom in this case also. So in this case, the example would be that a guilty person is marked as innocent. A guilty person is treated or marked or declared as innocent. Okay, now let's take another example of the type 2 error. By the way, the type 2 error is known as the false negative. Okay, the false negative. So the second example would be of the type 2 error is that our fraud transaction is marked as normal. It's really dangerous, right? So the money is lost because of that. Now, the probability of the type 2 error. What is the probability of the type 2 error? Probability of the type 2 error is nothing but beta, and power is equals to 1 minus beta. Here, by the word power, I mean the ability to detect the real effect. Power is nothing but the ability to detect real effect. So, if I compare both of these, I will say that my type in my type 1 error, the reality is that there is no effect, and by that reality, we take a decision. We reject the null hypothesis. In the type 2 error, the reality is that there is some real effect, and we fail to reject the null hypothesis. By the type 1 error, we can also say the false alarm in case of the fraud detection, and type 2 error is like the missed detection in our fraud detection system. So both the decision are risky. Okay, like if we if we flag the normal transaction as the fraud transaction, the customer will have the really bad experience, and he may leave the service. And in the type 2 error, the fraud transaction is marked as normal. That is even more riskier. So statistics is not about being perfect, it's about controlling the risk. So if you reduce the type 1 error, that is if you make the alpha, that is the significance value, very strict, you increase the type 2 error. And if you reduce the type 2 error, you increase the type 1 error. So there is always a trade off between the both. This is known as a trade off, by the way. Okay, so let me talk about the real life data science applications of these two errors, like where are they used. So the type 1 and the type 2 errors are used first in the medical testing. It is also used in the fraud detection, as I gave you the example, and it's also used in the spam filtering. At the same time, it's also used, it's like one of the main application is A/B testing. And it's also used in the machine learning classification. Threshold tuning. So, which error is more costly? So, okay, let me give you an example and you yourself decide that which error is more costly. So, for example, a cancer detection. In the cancer detection, you must avoid the type 2 error, because missing a cancer case is really dangerous than missing a non-cancer, like, declaring a non-cancerous person as a cancerous person. And in the case of the spam filter, you must avoid the type 1 error, that is blocking the real emails. Okay, you cannot take the risk of blocking the real email, flagging the real emails as the spam emails. So in the case of the spam filter, you must avoid the type 1 error, and in the case of the cancer detection, which is the medical related case, you must avoid the type 2 error. And like hypothesis testing is not about being right or wrong, it's about managing the risk of being the wrong. Okay, so this was all for this video, and if you like the content of this video, do like this video, subscribe my channel, and do not forget to hype my video just to keep me motivated. Meet you in the next day of the 20 days of statistics. Till then, bye bye.